Happy Rom-Com Month, everybody. We are doing 28 Days of Love, and today is day 19. I am your host, Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker, and when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut. It's another way to say Carpe Diem. Now, that comes from this strange thing that happened in college. I left an actual donut on a table, but it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave opportunities behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut. So the reason I'm saying this is that from time to time, I'll give myself a take the donut challenge. If there's something that I want to do or go after, I will make it official. I'll make some videos about it. It's a way to hold myself accountable. But this time, I'm actually opening this up to anybody who wants to join. So here we are. It's 28 Days of Love, 28 Days of Rom-Coms. It's day 19, and we're going to talk about Under the Tuscan Sun. And specifically, I'm going to talk about 10 things I love about this film. But I'm not doing this alone. I have a guest today who is Kieran Brown, who's a New York City-based jazz singer and songwriter. Welcome, Kieran.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you and talk about this movie.
This is going to be such a blast. I wanted to, before we get into what we love about the movie, I wanted to ask, like, what's your background with this film?
I saw this film for the first time 2 summers ago. My mom and I always sit on the couch when I go home to visit her in Connecticut, and we just are like, what movie do we want to watch? We've seen every rom-com. And we were just kind of scrolling through, and this one came up, and my mom had heard of it before. Of course, we love Diane Lane. And so we saw she was in it, and we're like, she doesn't make bad movies. So we're like, let's just give it a try, and absolutely fell in love. And I've watched it like so many times since. It's just such an incredible movie, and it's not as popular as a lot of like these other rom-coms, but I think it's just as good.
It's interesting because there's an age gap here for me and Kieran, and this was like a really talked about film when it came out. But it's interesting to see like what has held up in popular conversation. And so the fact that you this was a discovery for you means we need to get this movie out there again.
I know. Yeah,
Like,
I know.
it
And
has to
that's why
happen.
I made a TikTok immediately. I was like, who like why are we not talking about this movie? It's so good. It's like such a timeless, beautiful story. There's like the perfect amount of romance, the perfect amount of self-discovery. It's just like the marriage of everything that I love in a film. So I just immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah. And I feel like that like this movie, I don't know if I should say paved the way. I don't know if this is the first one that did this, but stuff like Eat, Pray, Love and things like that. This is like the ancestor like to some of those more modern films that we've continued this tradition of a woman traveling to find herself. And it's not to say this is the very first one. I could be missing some, but like this is definitely one that softened the ground for ones that came later. Um, but okay, so here's how we're going to talk about this. So we're going to do a top 10 list of things that we love about this movie. I'll do the even numbers. Kieran's going to do the odd numbers. And so we could mention sort of anything, big details, small details, dialogue, anything that comes up that we happen to love about it. Before we do that, just to recap this is Under the Tuscan Sun. It came out in 2003. It was directed by Audrey Wells. It's written by Frances Mays and Audrey Wells. It was a book from Frances Mays, and then it was adapted. And then it stars Diane Lane, of course, who plays Frances, Raoul Bova, who plays Marcello, Sandra Oh, who plays Patty, Lindsay Dungan, who plays Catherine. There's quite an extensive cast list for this, but those are some of the people that first come to mind when you think about this movie. So, okay, let's get into our top 10 list. Number 10 for me. Frances sees Brahmasole for the first time on the bus, and then the bus rolls away. There are these looks that Frances gives. Diane Lane nails this. And for context, she has already seen the brochure, the flyer for Brahmasole, like on the list of available properties at the real estate office. And so she's like clued in to notice this sign of this place, and this sign from the universe, if you will. So the bus stops right in front of this property. She sees Brahmasole, and the first look she gives is like, whoa, like it's this excitement. It's this, okay, this means something. I need to go, I need to do something. You can see her like moving towards it. and then the bus starts to roll away. And you can see that she feels like an opportunity is passing her by, like something that's supposed to be hers is passing her by. It feels so much bigger. And I think if we've ever had that experience, like you have that instinct to go towards something, and then that regret if you don't, and it gets captured beautifully in this series of two looks, reactions from Frances. So I just love this moment.
Love that moment so much. And it's so funny because it's like you see, and she plays this so well, like you see that internal battle she's feeling, and she like needs to make a split second decision, or else she could regret this for the rest of her life. And the fact that she just like trusted her gut, like I feel like I take away so much from that. Like in my own life, I want to be like that. I want to act like that too. I want to trust my gut. Like like notice when something is really, really cool and exciting and interesting. And but it also like is a little bit scary. Like she's fearful. There's so much uncertainty. And so the fact that she just like kind of goes for it is such like a badass move. And I absolutely love that. I feel like that's such a great like way to like introduce her character, especially like to as it's toward the beginning of the film. But I just I love that moment. I love that you pointed that out.
And also, as you're saying that, I'm thinking like it's cool to do that anyway. It's a really aspirational quality in a person to be able to trust your instinct and go for it. But especially now that she's in this hard time in her life and she's coming off of this, she's going through a divorce, and it's in a time when you would be inclined perhaps not to trust your instincts or even to question them. So the fact that she goes with it and like does continue to explore it anyway, even at a time when she could be like, I don't know, last time I trusted my instinct, it's just this really like maybe start trusting yourself again because you can make good choices.
I love that too. It's like such a lesson, like right off the bat. And in this film, there's so many like life lessons. Like there's tons, but like this is like the first one right off the bat, and that I feel like is kind of like the heartbeat of this film.
Mm, absolutely. So okay, that's couple looks become a bigger theme for us for number 10. What do you have
Yeah.
for number 9?
So I wanted to talk about the visuals for number nine. So the visuals in this movie are, and the cinematography of it is just like one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen on screen, which is why it really stuck out to me. It's like the perfect movie to watch in the summer if you want to just really get into the vibe, or in the winter when you want that kind of escape. I just absolutely love like the visuals of like the beautiful countryside in Tuscany when they're on the bus, the sunflower fields, and of course the house. But also like when they go to Positano, like the seaside, like it's just so gorgeous. It really shows off the country. And I feel like I've actually never been to Italy. Have you been to Italy before?
I have, yeah.
And I want to go. It is on like number one on my bucket list, and I really need to make it happen in the next few years. But I feel like it's like this movie should be like in all travel books and like all like for the country just showcases how gorgeous this country is, and it's the perfect setting for the story. Yeah, what do you think about it? I mean, it's just
I love it. And of course, all of the things that you mentioned, including the bar setting in Positano, but also like the sort of more confined moments, like the olive trees, like when they're picking the olives, like even something like that, which is it could be anywhere, right? Like it's it's not as much as like they're putting a bar in the context of Positano. It's like this could be an olive tree anywhere in Italy. But they managed to shoot it beautifully, no matter whether there's like a clear sense of place or whether they're making it like a smaller space. So they yeah, I can't agree more. This is just like a feast for the eyes on many levels.
exactly. And I feel like the house itself and even just like Tuscany is like it's another character in this film. And it just is like such it's just such a joy to watch and very easy on the eyes. And I love it. I really, really love the setting. It's just so magical and whimsical and like everything you want when you want to watch a film like this, you know?
Hmm. I'm going to take that same theme, but I'm going to take it from another angle for number 8. the cooking lunch montage. So we get this whole sequence where Frances is cooking for the workers, and just one meal after another, the meals get bigger and bigger, more and more dishes, and they're elaborate. And they make it look so gorgeous. Everything from like even when you're seeing entire plates on the table to just like even when she's just like throwing salt into a pot, everything just looks like gorgeous. You know, how lucky are these folks that they get to eat these meals from her every day. So yeah, it was a feast for the eyes for the setting, but now also for the food itself.
And I also just like love the themes of like community in those moments too, which I feel like is also another heartbeat of this film, like just community, whether or not this also actually leads into my next point. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that.
No,
See
go for it.
into I think this is number seven, right?
Hmm.
Number seven is kind of like the sense of community. Especially like her relationship with the workers is so special because she is feeling lonely and it's okay to feel lonely. And I think that's like one of the prominent themes that I took away from this is like, yes, she was going through this brutal divorce. She was so far away from her family and her friends. Um, and she was feeling lonely, and it's okay to feel like that. Um, and want companionship, either that be from a romantic partner, which of course she explores with Marcello, and or with something else, whether that be the house or with the companionship of the workers and the friends that she makes along the way. So I think that's just like one of the most beautiful parts of the movie as well. And of course, they share those wonderful moments, like when they're in the olive field and when they're enjoying that feast, that just is like so heartwarming.
And I love your point there. And as you really think back on the movie, there's community everywhere for her. Like even the apartment complex, I guess the furnished apartment complex that she calls what divorce camp. Like that's actually community as well. Those people kind of don't talk as much to each other, but there is community there. Or like the gay and away bus tour that are so supportive of her. They're a community. So Frances is sort of never without community, but sometimes she is like accepts it more. Sometimes she embraces the idea of it more. Like there are people around her, and sometimes she's like, I have nobody. It's like, no, but they're all these people.
No, it's I think too, like also like the fact that she's like kind of newly single and exploring that as well, but she's also witnessing so much love around her. Um, that's just completely like filling her. Again, also she wants to find like romance with a partner as well. Like she's looking for that as well. But I think she finds throughout her journey in the film and um she finds this fulfillment in other ways. And I feel like it's like this romance with the house, right? It's like not a tangible partner, but the way that this house has like kind of changed her life for the better, offered that companionship because it was the center of all this community that she ends up building around it. Yeah, I just absolutely love it. I love this movie. It's so good, so good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, community, and we're trying to find community through doing this. So there's the theme continues in different ways. Um, I wanted to go to another sort of life lesson that we get from Frances. So for number six, she shares like, okay, she buys this house. Buyer's remorse is a real thing. It happens. But she gives her thoughts, her advice to herself or to the reader on how to overcome that. And she talks about going slowly, one room at a time, getting to know it, getting comfortable with it. And soon enough, you'll feel comfortable overall. And that really resonated for me. I think about like a time in my life that I was really hard when I was a lot younger, where I felt like I had nothing and it was really scary. And every day I'd wake up and I'd say, just do one thing today to make your life better. And that idea of like just doing one thing or just going one room at a time, if you keep doing that, there's a cumulative effect and you don't necessarily feel better instantly, but after a little bit of time, you look back and you say, "Oh, it's fine now. How did it get there?" So I think this idea of just like slow down, get rid of the overwhelm. You don't have to focus on the whole thing at once. Just take it one thing at a time, one room at a time. It's a lesson that I've used in my life, and I love that it was reflected here.
I love that. And I love like the analogy, like the physically, like she's taking it from one room, she's building this house, she's restoring it from the ground up, basically. It's a mess, but she's taking it little by little. She's working on little different pieces. And of course, there's things along the way, like there's a leak, and then of course the storm, like there's things that obviously come in front of you on your journey that you have to overcome, but you will overcome it. And I also just like love that theme. There's so many good themes, but yeah, I really like that point that you made.
Yeah. Um, you're right though. There's like every few lines, it feels like there's a whole theme that you could take to heart and expand upon. I think that's why this movie and the book resonate so much for people. But so that's the one I chose for number six. What do you have for number five?
Number five. Oh, we kind of talk about we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to also just go back to kind of the theme, and you talked about this in point number 10, but the theme of like finding beauty in the uncertainty and kind of like the fear of the unknown. And this kind of just like weaves in. Um, again, like a woman taking a risk out of expectations and kind of out of her own expectations. Like I feel like she's constantly surprising herself. And especially like in the scene in the storm. That I love is so funny when the lightning strikes the washing machine outside. I just thought that was hilarious. Like that is like so not real, but like
Yeah.
I just it seems so fake, but like I love that little playfulness, but she was kind of surprising herself like she was like a little bit questioning herself like what am I doing here? Like she just took this leap of faith. She's so excited and then that storm happens and it's kind of like that first test. She's like, "Oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? I'm all by myself in a storm, the windows, everything." It's like it's crazy and it's just a like I think it's just a really beautiful like um message because she does get through it. Like it is a beautiful day the next day and like she does have people to help her. And I just absolutely love that and I love that she again is like constantly surprising herself with how much she is capable of and how strong she is despite all that she has gone through in her life and then that she goes through while she's restoring this home.
It's so interesting because she's sort of the opposite of me in a certain way of like there's a scene when she's talking to Patty and she's like, I'm gonna restore this house. Patty's like, you don't know how to do that. And she's like, no, remember I helped you with this household thing. She's like, you didn't though. Like she's like, can we just like reset and remember who you actually are and what your actual skills are? And somehow Frances has like talked herself into thinking she can do these tasks. And I'm
Mhm.
sort of the opposite, where I'm like, well, I've never done a thing like that before. I don't know if I can do it. I have the following five reasons to explain why I can't do this, and I have to overcome that. And she's taking the reverse approach of it, and she's like, no, yeah, I have this. And people are like, well, but
Yeah, her friends are like, what the heck are you doing? Like, we did not expect giving you this ticket for this trip to turn into this. But I also love that she, even when she doesn't know what she's doing, like she does lean on her community to like help her. And like she knows like she can't do this all alone. But the fact that she even was attempting it is honestly amazing because I could never.
well, but
I
that's the thing. I think that's the thing about this. It's like you never know what you can do until you have to do it, and then until you've done it. And I think real confidence sometimes just comes from you've experienced a thing or you've experienced something similar or you've experienced something else hard and you know that you can do a thing like this too. And I think Frances's story here goes to show us that like actually anybody could do this.
yeah,
Um, and she's just the person we're tracking. So I think there's something very specific about her, but also something kind of universal about everybody watching.
yeah. And it's
So,
crazy. It is like some part of me when I watch this, I'm like, I want to be her. I want to do this. But also like, you have she had a whole life before she got here. And it's kind of like, again, her friends are saying like, um, like you like what are you doing? Like you're dropping your whole life to do this. But the fact that she does that and she's so sure about this, even though she's not sure about like the little things, right? She's so sure about this decision and like that this house chose her and that this is the next chapter of her life, that it's so interesting. And sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just go to Italy and get a house and see what happens. Maybe it will pick me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why not? You know, that brings me to point number four. So I was debating what I would put in this spot because this is like a personal story for me, but um the I guess the big picture of what I want to say is just like the feeling of trying to understand a different culture from your own. And the fact that we get that in big ways and little ways in this movie. But I wanted to focus on the flag throwing festival, not the festival itself, but Francis's reaction to understanding what the context of this thing is. It's being explained to her. He's like, Pavel wants to throw the flag. This is a big deal for him, and she's like, okay, but a flag throwing felt like, what are we doing? And then he's like, no, I want to show that I can throw a flag better than an Italian. And she's like, but still, like, I still don't understand. Like, why is this part of your love story? I like she can't quite grasp all of the
Yeah.
nuance around this. She's totally game for it, but she's like, I don't get it. And it reminded me, so I've in the early part of my career, I used to work major international sport events like Olympic Games and Rugby World Cup
Okay.
and stuff.
So cool.
I mean, it
So
was a really interesting world to be in. I was really passionate about it. And so for 2011, I worked for the Rugby World Cup when it happened in New Zealand. And I moved out to New Zealand in 2010, and I was there through for almost 2 years. And the first week that I got there, I was supposed to go on there was a small group that was going on a trip to a bunch of the venues on the North Island to see some of the different venues and do a site visit. And so we were going to fly to the first place and then we're going to drive to all the other places and then get back to Wellington. And so some of the places were in like bigger, slightly bigger cities, some of them were in much smaller places. And so we got to this one little town. And there was a venue in this little town, and we stayed in this hotel. And we pull up, and we all get out of the car, and we're checking into this hotel. And the guy who we were checking in with looks directly at me and says, "Whole or trim?" And I was like, he's like, "Whole or trim?" And I was like, so I'm looking around, and my coworker leans in, and she's like, "He's asking what kind of milk you want." And I was like, I still don't know why. Like she did
what
what
the
she
heck?
thought was an accurate explanation of the situation, and I was still confused because there was yet
Oh my
another
goodness.
level of this that I didn't get. So then I found out, like, oh, he's asking what kind of milk I want because if for my coffee tomorrow morning. Okay, this is not a thing that you're asked in most places. In fact, every other place I've ever stayed in my entire life. But I show up in this place, and that was like part of it was customary, I guess. I was like,
Wow.
there were so many levels of this. Like, I don't call it trim. I didn't know he was talking about milk. I still don't know why he's talking about milk.
True. Yeah, what? Can you
And
imagine they did that at Starbucks? They're like, oh, they're trim.
yeah, it doesn't happen for us, right? So I was like,
Oh,
okay, I am going to have a bit of a journey here trying to master this. Like, even though they're speaking English, I have a bit of a learning curve somehow. And it wasn't just word choices, it's like cultural context. And
mhm.
this scene with the flag throwing festival and Pavel trying to explain why he wants to do this and her being like, I have literally no idea why. But she rolls with it anyway. And I think that's kind of the energy, the spirit that's required if you're going to be an expat. Like you have to be willing to say, there are going to be a bunch of days where I don't get it and
Mhm.
I just need to roll with it.
And
And
embrace it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what a beautiful energy in this scene.
I love that. And I also just love how like she's always so curious. She stays curious and excited to fully immerse herself in the culture. And oh, my little ring light died. Oh well. Um, but yeah, like she feels like she wants to fully just jump in and she asks questions and she doesn't understand, but she doesn't get too frustrated. She really wants to know and stays curious and invites this culture in. And I just love that. And I also love like how the way she makes friends with so many different types of people. Like she just makes friends with whoever. And I think that's just such like a really cool part of her character. And I love that scene too. I actually kind of forgot about that scene because it's so easy to get swept away and like the house and all that goes on there too. But there's so much that happens outside of the actual home, like in the town. There's so many amazing scenes as well. We could be talking for hours. We could dissect every scene. Like there's so much.
And
Um,
normally that's the format I do for when I talk about films or TV,
yeah.
but maybe between us and everybody who's watching, we can cover everything. So like the comment section, I want to hear from people about what they love when we're not mentioning it. But yeah, that was number four.
I love that. I actually wanted to, I actually didn't have this down originally, but for number three, I wanted to talk about, and I kind of wanted to ask you your thoughts on like her relationship with Marcello and what the purpose of that relationship was in her life. Of course, no spoiler, but we kind of know how it ends.
Oh, you
And
can spoil it. Go for it.
Okay, we can spoil it. We know that she ends up going to see him in the most gorgeous dress I've ever seen. So he's an idiot for not taking her. But he has kind of already moved on and he didn't wait for her, like she thought he would. Italian men, I mean. I mean, again, the cultural, like the dating, in America versus there, like it's a little bit different, very different actually. So I'm curious what like your thoughts are like on what the role of him in this movie was, because I loved him. It's like when he first stepped into the picture, you were like, who is this? He's so cute. He was giving leading man, and then like it ends kind of so like it kind of just falls flat with his character and then we end up hating him. But like yeah, I want to know your thoughts on that whole the lifeline of that relationship and the themes behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for her, the way I interpret it, like I think for her, it's partly about knowing she can feel that way again, that
Hmm.
like she was sort of closing that side of herself off after, I mean, it's sort of the divorce is kind of still in progress, I would think, but
Right.
she's sort of as much as she's going out and doing new things and meeting new people, she hasn't exposed herself in the dating scene and she's still being very protective. So I think meeting him kind of lets her unlock that part of herself again. And granted, she had bigger expectations for how long term this would be with Marcello. And I think Marcello did too. But I
Hmm.
think in terms of how I feel about Marcello, I actually don't think I don't hate him. I think he is I think his philosophy is if it's this hard to make this happen, then it shouldn't be happening.
Right.
And like they didn't really have a standing arrangement or standing agreement. He didn't really have a way to contact her again to say this isn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing anymore. And then she showed up and he's like, it's not a thing. Like this was a lot. We're doing a long distance thing. And when we try to make that distance less, it's not working. So I think he just wasn't ready to sign on for a relationship where they don't see each other very much. And she had other expectations, but they never really had a chance to talk about that. So
Yeah.
I think they were just, I get it. Like I think it does look like, oh, this man, he's with another woman. It's like, well, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Um,
It has
and
been she had to figure herself out.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think like there are all different personality types in the world. There's all different things that we value. And for some people, it's like the I'm gonna wait for you no matter what. Like that's the thing we value. And for some people it's like I want to go with what is manifesting. I want to go with like what the universe is bringing to me, not what I'm trying to make happen. And I think those are two really different philosophies. And in this
Yeah.
situation, they didn't line up.
Yeah, we see her like kind of go throughout the movie and she she is spontaneous. There's this spontaneity of when she decides to get off the bus and go to the house. And there's also this, and that works out, that ends up working out. And then there's the spontaneity of when she decides to go visit him, and then that doesn't work out. So it's such a heartbreaking scene, but it's also such a crucial part of her character development where she doesn't like, she cries about it, but she doesn't like let it stop her from like what like her main reason for being there is. It's just like a little blip on her like journey to self-discovery and like kind of self-love and discovering the love within herself, especially after her divorce and being there. And so yeah, it's interesting too because I'm like, do I hate him or do I like kind of understand? And now your point really made me kind of like understand a little bit more context.
Well, and I think without Marcello, would she be as open to the guy at the end? You know,
Oh
who
my
comes
God.
looking for the author who reviewed her book? Like, would it that interaction have hit her the same way if she hadn't just sort of like dusted off that part of her, like took the cobwebs away from that part of
Yeah,
herself with Marcello? Um,
exactly.
like, and
The
we'll
way
never really know.
No, and the way I was shook. Have you seen Gilmore Girls?
Yeah.
But I was like, Christopher, what are you doing here? What the heck are you doing here? Like, you should be in Stars Hollow. I absolutely loved. I want like a whole movie of that. Like, I want a whole movie of them being there. But I loved how like the movie felt complete even before he came into the picture. Like with the ceremony at the home and just like she looks so gorgeous in her dress and she's happy and fulfilled. But like I think I'd ended the movie there and it would have been great. But I love how they just like added that little like cherry on top at the very end.
And
But
I think that's like the lesson about life. It's like just when you don't need it anymore is when you find it.
then you
Especially
don't
like
expect it.
dating, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Like if you felt like it was complete, then maybe Francis felt like it was complete. And we've certainly got Mr. Martini being like, it's complete. You know? And then this guy shows up and it's more complete. It's better.
Oh, she's like, oh, I mean, so funny. I love that part. Love that.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
man,
Well,
so
okay. So let's see. You just did number three. Is that
yes, that was
okay?
number two. So you have number two.
So let's do number two. And that brings me to this point. Getting what you wish for. Uh, you know, I something that I've like evolved in my thinking about over the years. When I was really young, I'd have like really specific things that I wanted. And if I didn't articulate them specifically, sometimes I got it in not the way that I meant. And I was like, oh, the lesson here is be really specific when you dream what you dream. But this movie and some of my subsequent life experience makes a case for maybe you should be general and see what kind of surprises the universe throws into your mystery box. Because, you know, Francis says, what if nobody sleeps in these bedrooms? What if nobody's ever here for me to cook for? What if I want a wedding in this house? I want a family in this house. And these things, she probably meant something particular, but she didn't articulate them that way. And they came through, they happened in the more general way. And I love that we get like Mr. Martini being like, it happened though. Like everything you asked for is
Yeah.
here now. So just take a moment and appreciate that. She's like, oh. So it's this interesting thing about like, is the lesson if you have something that you mean specifically, be more specific, or is it keep it sort of like loose and free and let what happens to fulfill that happen?
Yeah.
And I don't know, did you have a feeling on that?
That was one of the most, I remember like when he says that and when he's like, well, you have those things. I think I paused the movie because I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. Like it's so funny the perspective, like his perspective on it versus hers and like what she intended versus what actually came true. But it is just so interesting. And yeah, I really like that too because she had these expectations, but she didn't really manifest them. She kind of just like went with the flow and all these things kind of came to her. but it's interesting because I feel like these days, especially like in 2025, everyone's like, manifest what you want, be so specific, or write down exactly what you want. But I think there's also, like, on the flip side of that, there's a beauty in keeping it a little bit more general, kind of following your path, trusting your instinct, and just instead of thinking so ahead, living more in the moment. Um, yeah, I don't know, that part was so, it was like, whoa, there's this movie, like it's the way she was viewing, like, the world is not how world was viewing her. So it just really speaks to like the human experience and how multi-dimensional it is.
Mm. Ah, it's so good.
It's
Um,
so good. It's so and that I think that was like the tipping point. I'm like, okay, like people need to see this film because there's really like something for everybody in this film, and I feel like that's kind of cliche, but it's, again, it's not just about the romance. Yes, it's like a rom-com. There's a little bit of comedy. There's of course a little bit of romance, but it's more about this kind of self-discovery, which again is like the heartbeat of it. Um, yeah, I love it so much.
well, and now we get to the most important moment. Number one, this one goes to you, Kieran. What's our number one favorite thing about this movie?
Oh, gosh, I can't, because everything, I like don't want to weigh it like that, right? Um, I need to talk about the fashion.
Okay.
Fashion in this movie is just phenomenal. Um, and I think is like one of the reasons why I really fell in love with this movie too. And I think as we talk about it more and as I watched a few more times, again, all of those themes, they really hit home, but like the fashion is just absolutely stunning. And I love how, like, I mean, Diane Lane is just such a natural beauty. Like, I remember like watching her in like the Outsiders movie and like all the other movies that she's been in, and like she is just so gorgeous and she could wear anything. But like I love when she's fixing up the house, she's wearing these hair wraps, she's wearing denim, plaid, like she's dressing a little bit like more masculine. But then on like the flip side, she's really embracing like the Italian culture, and she wears this, I mean, my favorite look in the movie is like the white dress that she wears when she goes to meet Marcello and Positano. And it's like that gorgeous belted white dress. And I immediately Googled, I'm like, I need that dress. Like, I need that dress. I love like
Did
the
you
clothes.
find anything?
No, I didn't. I mean, there are some things, but I don't really know where I would wear it. This is why I'm booking my trip to Italy, to wear this dress and recreate it. But yeah, I just absolutely love the fashion. Like it's so classy and tasteful, but it also, she wears these things like the hair wraps that are very European, but also like it's a little bit American with the denim and the plaid, and so I just really love like I really love that part of the movie.
I also, okay, I should not talk about fashion. I don't have the language for it. But the end, maybe you can help me get there.
Yeah,
The dress at the end, the like the orange but the
the orange.
pink,
Yeah.
um, I feel like that kind of fabric, that sort of like it's more than one color,
Hmm.
was a thing around this time.
Hmm.
Um, and it works so beautifully in that backyard garden setting because there was a fruit on the trees that sort of brought out the orange.
Yes. Yeah.
It was really well curated. Um, my goodness,
She's like
so
one with
beautiful.
her scenery too, and it's I was just kind of this just kind of popped into my mind about how in the beginning of like the film she's dressed a little bit more modest, a little bit older, more mature, and like a little bit more business casual, business professional. But then she goes to Italy and she kind of just like lets loose, and she's really embracing her femininity and and exploring her style, and the people around her are influencing that, the culture, just the landscape of Tuscany. So I feel like her fashion is like another storyline throughout the film too, like from the beginning to the end. It's really, she kind of goes through this whole journey, and how like where she is in her life is kind of reflecting the clothes she's wearing, because how old is she supposed to be in the movie? Is she in her like late 30s, early 40s, or
Ooh, that's a good question. I would think younger.
yeah, younger, like early 30s?
Let's put it there, but somebody can probably correct me on this. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if she's meant to be the same age as Patty, but
Right.
she's looking to, have kids. They've been trying for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Patty would be trying to do that in her late 30s. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
somewhere around there. I just like I really feel like I love how she kind of embraces her femininity in this film, and I just love it. What about you? Is there anything else you want to say about that? I mean,
Well, I think that part of the influence there is the character of Catherine, who has a totally standout fashion style, and is sort of like a muse. She's a muse. Like, is she a muse? Who is she a muse for? And in this case, it might be that she's a muse for Francis.
yeah.
So I think a little bit of that influence and how Francis starts to dress might be coming from sort of the elegance of that
Yes.
character that she's been seeing around town. And she's almost like assuming that role a little bit in her life, which I think is lovely. And by the way, I know we haven't really talked about Catherine, but I just want to give a shout out to there's a scene right after Francis's big night with Marcello,
Oh,
and she finds Catherine. She looks almost exactly like Catherine.
oh yeah,
She's
yeah.
all done up, and Catherine is sitting at a table with a bunch of nuns.
Oh my gosh, I kind of forgot about that.
So I've never noticed this before, but first of all, that's hysterical.
It's
Second of
crazy.
all,
She's
one
so
of the
Samantha.
nuns, they're drinking, I don't know if it's cappuccino or what, but one of the nuns, sort of in the middle of the table in the back, has just a full-on foam mustache.
How did
And
you
I was
notice that?
I never saw that before in this movie, but I was like, this woman, I am so delighted about this background actor who
That
doesn't
is
have lines, but has
the true
fully
shining
committed
moment.
to
Yeah.
the foam mustache.
I love that. This film is so quirky. And I feel like again, like that's I've like just kind of to like put like a beautiful bow on it. It is so quirky. Like there are little moments like that again, like with the washing machine on fire. Like, come on, that's ridiculous. Like it goes up in the air, like the faux mustache, even the whole flag throw. Like there are just so many fun little quirks in this movie. That like I really like it kind of speaks to like the beauty of this project and like even at like watching interviews of like Diane Lane like talking about this project. She just has like such fond memories and like I love that. Like I love that like when actors like really do like enjoy films they're working on because especially early in their career sometimes actors when they get a little bit more serious they don't want to be known for especially rom-coms too serious actors that do rom-coms I feel like sometimes they're like they kind of brush it off as not some of their like most notable work but like the fact that she really like loves this film and is so connected to it and really looks back on it fondly also just like as a viewer and a lover of the film just like makes it so much better and makes it a better experience especially as I rewatch it knowing that
That
know.
helps a lot. We've lived long enough now. We have enough information out there that like
Yeah.
sometimes there's a project you love and then you hear about what was happening behind the scenes or like
Oh,
maybe a toxic relationship on set and you
yeah.
don't really know how to feel about the project anymore. It's like that will always be part of what you think about when you watch it again. And
Yeah.
so, like, the reverse is true as well. When somebody enjoyed their experience, it
Yeah.
adds something to the movie. And I love hearing that that's how she's talked about this film.
Yes,
So,
exactly. It just reminds me of, and this is like a whole nother rabbit hole we're not going to get into, but It Ends With Us. Like, did you see that film? It Ends With Us?
I think I did, and I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to
Like,
place
Diane
it.
Lane and Justin Baldoni. It's like
Yeah.
this the whole drama of it, like knowing about the
Yep.
drama and lawsuits, and then I like knowing about that before I saw the film, I was watching the film like, oh my goodness. And so sometimes it is nice, like I don't know if you're like this when you're watching movies or things, like do you like to go in with no knowledge? Like I didn't even know there was a book, like before I watched this movie. I kind of just jumped in and then after I started to get curious.
Yeah, I have this a similar process. I won't look up much about it beforehand, and then afterwards I might watch interviews about it, or
Yeah.
like I'll want to know more about it.
Yeah.
But I try to go in not having that information in the beginning.
You can
But
formulate your own opinion about it. Yeah, I think that's important.
yeah. Oh my goodness. This has been such a blast. Those are the 10
So
things
fun.
we most love about this film. But everybody who's watching, what do you love about this movie? Maybe you want to upvote some of the things we mentioned. Maybe there's some things that you want to mention that haven't gotten mentioned yet so far in our coverage. So feel free to jump into the comments and tell us what you love about this film. And before we close this out, Kieran, is there anything that you wanted to plug? Anywhere we can learn about what's coming up for you? Plug what you want to plug.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram to keep up with me, all things music. Again, I'm a jazz singer, songwriter, but I tour around the country, starting to tour around the world. Hopefully, I'll go to Italy. That would be amazing. Full circle moment with this film. But yeah, you could follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Kieran Brown Music. And my website is the same. So yeah, stay up to date with me about what I'm doing. I'm releasing my debut album this year. It's called Loving You. I'm super excited about it. The singles are coming out and starting in April. So the full album comes out in July. I'm excited about it. And yeah, you could check me out on Instagram to get all the information about that. But thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun, Melissa.
This was such a blast to talk with you. And I have to say, for those who are coming to this video but have not yet heard your music before, you're in for a real treat. I've been going down a rabbit hole myself. And what a talent you have. And it's this like old timey sound. And it's just so good. So I hope everybody will check that out. And for those of you who are all in on Rom-Com Month, there's plenty more where that came from. So next up on our list is day 20. We're going to talk about Pretty Woman.
Ooh.
And this one is from 1990, and it's with, of course, Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, Jason Alexander, Laura San Giacomo. And I'm joined for that one by a guest who's coming back to cover another movie with me, Danielle Terciano from Made Possible by Pop Culture, the Made Possible by Pop Culture podcast. She covered Notting Hill with me. She was an entertainment journalist back in the day, still is in that world, and so has a very unique viewpoint to the movie Pretty Woman. So we're going to get into that one, but there's so many fun movies still coming up on Rom-Com Month. So be sure to join me, everybody. And in the meantime, happy Rom-Com Month. Go out there, get love, get donuts. Bye, everyone.
Bye.